Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to be considerate of everyone's time. My name is Paula McCain, and I'm a recovery business advisor for the North Central Texas Small Business Development Center. Today is National Dark Chocolate Day, as well as National Freedom Day, and we should all celebrate that. The SBDC is a leading provider of assistance for small businesses. We are grant funded, and because of that, we are able to bring webinars such as today's webinar to you at no cost. Our webinar today is Introduction to QuickBooks Online Part 2. And this is with Stacy Kildall and Bryce Forney. You would please put your questions in chat room, and our presenters will get to them throughout their presentation. Welcome, Stacy and Bryce.
Thank you, Paula. Glad to be here again.
So we talked a lot in the previous session about the interface and getting comfortable with the sales center, the expenses center. And today we're going to dive in on the mechanics of what I feel is the killer little app portion of QBO, which is bank feed. And then we're also going to talk about reports and some productivity tips and tricks. So before we dive into the details, let's tell you a little bit about us. Stacy, what would you like others to know about you?
Well, I would like them to know that as we are recording this, we're on the precipice of quite a large snowstorm, and I am very, very excited about that. So I'm looking forward to some snow. I'm fine with winter as long as there is snow for me to do activities. I own and operate Kildall Services LLC. I'm located in White Lake, Michigan, which is right about here, about an hour north of Detroit. And I have been using QuickBooks since about 1998, 99, and I have been a member of Intuit's Trainer Writer Network as well as you are. And for those people who don't know what the Trainer Writer Network is, well, there are 50,000 pro advisors in the U.S. or about thereabouts. There's only about 8 of us that do training for Intuit, and I am one of those. I'm lucky enough, privileged enough to be one of those 8.
Wonderful. And my name is Bryce Forney. I am a CPA in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm in the East Bay. So no water view or anything, but about 20 minutes from Berkeley, which is a well-known town in Oakland. And I primarily, in my business, I'm preparing tax returns. I'm so buried in tax returns, I can't even utter that, but it's a great time of year to be an accounting professional. So, and I'm also a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. So I just love simplicity and profitability. So it's that simple. So because we want you, of course, to be focused on what we're sharing in QBO, we're going to be in product today, as well as just showing the slide deck. I'm going to go ahead and not be seen by video because I think
bandwidth, it makes it easier.
Yeah, it distracts from situation, because then I'll just look crazy anyway, darting my eyes around to multiple screens. If I can figure out how to there we go. So as we mentioned, we're going to be talking about banking, and then also we're going to go into reporting. And then we have a special surprise at the end for tips and tricks that are not shown here. So that's going to be well, a real cliffhanger. So starting with bank feeds, I feel that it's really valuable to understand the absolute value of the bank feed concept before we go into the mechanics of setting up a bank feed and getting transactions into QuickBooks Online QBO through bank feed. So the beauty of bank feed is that QBO is connecting to the financial institution, whether that be a bank or a credit card company or credit card bank, and it's bringing in the date of the transaction, the amount of the transaction, and some bank text or bank detail that is all of the words that you see when you get the statement, the bank statement or credit card statement. So it makes it really efficient to get the transactions into QBO, and it makes those transactions more accurate. Without bank feed, by contrast, you would be entering transactions, and if there's a typo in the amount or some other, date entry, we just rolled into the new year. So if your date is off, that transaction would show up as of the date it's posted. Whereas with bank feed, those things are essentially guaranteed accurate. So it makes it so that when you go to reconcile, to compare what's in the books with what happened at the bank, it's going to be the same because it came from the bank. Is there anything else that, am I saying that right, Stacy?
Yeah, I think so. The other thing I do want to mention is it's not the only way to, it's a very common way to enter transactions into QBO. Whereas Bryce does tax, he's mostly a tax preparer and he does business valuations. And I'm doing a lot of, I don't do tax, I'm not a bookkeeper. So I'm doing the books for my clients. And I would say a lot of my clients, I have about 45 clients, I would say about between 50 and 75% of the transactions are entered in through the bank feeds. And a lot of times clients are entering bills and paying bills and marking the bills paid through QuickBooks, and we're able to match those through the bank feed, or they're creating invoices and then receiving payments against those invoices or creating sales receipts. But I will say that for all of my clients, the credit card transactions are 100% entered in via the bank feeds. So I just want to make sure that, because it's not the only way, it is a very common way, but I just want to make sure that people don't think this is the only way to enter transactions into QuickBooks, because I just had a conversation doing a training session the last week about that. They thought that the bank feeds were the only way to get those transactions into QuickBooks. And so I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And in my experience, kind of as you alluded to, Stacy, the with respect to a checking account, it's more likely that transactions are going to be entered in the system in advance
Yeah.
of what's coming in through bank feed. And of course, that's perfectly okay. We want our kind of future bank balance to be accurate within QBO so that we have enough money in the bank to make payroll on Friday. So that's the critical element.
And
So
the
yeah,
other thing I want to mention too is debit card transactions are generally going to be posted and entered via the bank feeds as well. So it's really only if you are like writing checks or making bill payments or things like that. And that's why I say about 50 to 75% of the transactions. I mean, the bulk of transactions get entered in through the bank feed, and it just it makes things so much easier, so much more accurate, like you said.
and when we say entered in through bank feed, that's using bank feed as the initial point of entry.
Yeah.
You still benefit from bank feed, even if you're entering the transactions in advance and then using the bank feed to validate or confirm that that what you entered is the right amount, date, etc.
Yep.
So with that, let's talk about initial setup of bank feed. So where you will go in QBO is, what I love about this slide is it can be different for you. What we're highlighting here says banking on the left navigation. That in your books may say transactions. In fact, most likely will say transactions. In fact, let's just go out to the sample company, which you can access by Googling QBO test drive. and that'll bring us into this Craig's Design and Landscaping.
And I will put in the test drive links into the chat.
Oh, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have banking on the left navigation that may say transactions. And then you have the ability to choose link account. That's going to create a new connection, a new card here in BankFeed. So if we click on link account, it's going to provide us with the common, or what do you say, like most typically used banks, the big bank players, and then you can put in your own bank name to find your specific bank if it's not one of those.
And I want to say just a best practice here, because there are different types of Wells Fargo, there's different types of Amex accounts. A really good best practice here is to copy and paste the URL, the website that you go to log in to access that financial institution, and paste that into the search here so that you are finding the exact account to which you want to connect to QuickBooks. So, and the reason I mentioned this is a couple weeks ago, I was helping someone connect their Wells Fargo. They got here, they just clicked Wells Fargo, and they were not able to log in. And I said, let's go back for a minute and copy and paste the URL. And then once they did that, they were able to find and get the correct login.
That is a very good point.
Thank you.
So, yeah, of course. I mean, if any point you make is, I don't even need to call that out, but that is a valuable tip. So once you enter the credentials of the account holder, not a separate user or view only access user of the account holder, then it's going to walk you through, and there may be some confirmation where the financial institution will send a text to the mobile phone number on account to confirm that this is valid, or you may have to do some authorization of sorts with a financial institution so that the bank knows that it's really the account holder setting up this connection within QBO. Here, once we have created bank feeds, and from my perspective, really every account should be set up for bank feed. Again, whether you're entering the transactions manually, so to speak, in advance of when they're going to clear the bank, or you're using the mobile app to enter those transactions at point of purchase, as we talked about in the last session, there's value to bank feed in both scenarios, and we'll go through the details of the mechanics of bank feed, basically. So here we see our bank feed cards. You're clicking on, right now we're looking at the checking account because that's the card that's highlighted blue, and we're going to manage the transactions that are in the below area. So you're either matching a transaction to something that's already in the books, or you're adding a transaction where none previously existed. So the general benefits of bank feeds, in QBO, you can have technically an unlimited number of bank or credit card accounts, which I find funny because it's like, who's really going to have more than, I don't know, 5?
I have clients, I have 2 clients that each have about 9 connected.
Okay.
Yeah,
But it's
exactly.
not gonna get into the
That
20s.
okay that you have right there. Yes. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
And then what's going to happen over time as transactions are entered through bank feed, bank feed learns in a way. I would put quotes around the word learns because it's a machine. It's just looking at patterns for how a transaction that has a certain bank text, like say McDonald's, if you code that to meals or owner draw or mistakes I've made, whatever account you choose, it's going to remember that. So the next time it sees that bank text of McDonald's, it'll suggest, and you can turn that on or off, but it'll suggest the same category. So you get consistency. And then you can actually use bank feed and manage bank feed from a mobile device. So that may seem a bit unusual to want to do bank feed management from a mobile device, but it's actually pretty well optimized on for a smaller screen. So now we're going to go into the actual workflows around bank feed. So here is where you have a choice of two things to do with a transaction in bank feed. You can either do a match or do an add. Those are the only two things. So if a transaction is already in the books and you are validating, saying, yep, this is consistent with what happened, the transaction in the books matches what came in from the bank, you're clicking on match. And what that does is it marks that transaction as cleared, which makes it easier to reconcile, easier to compare bank to books, but it does not add a transaction in. So sometimes when people click on match, they're fearful that they already entered the transaction in the books. Is this going to duplicate in some way? And that is not the case. Match is just going to mark that transaction as cleared.
Yep, it's just telling QuickBooks that it hit the bank account. It is done and all set, and
everything's great.
Yeah, and everything is hunky-dory.
The second thing you can do is add a transaction. And as Stacy mentioned, this is really common for credit card transactions, or credit card bank accounts, where you're using bank feed as the transaction point of entry. So you're waiting until you see the transactions come in through the bank feed, and then adding a payee, adding a category, and recording the transaction in the books directly from bank feed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the match versus add. And we've got some examples here of transactions that follow a pattern as far as what we use match most commonly for versus add. If your business is a cash-based business, meaning you're recording sales and getting paid at the same time, the transaction for that type of business is a sales receipt, and the sales receipt is recording the payment right when the sale occurs. Therefore, it's already in the books, so that when we go into bank feed, it's simply validating, just matching what's already been entered. And that happens also for invoice payments. You're entering the payment in the books and then entering the deposit in the books because you're taking that money to the bank. So those payments will also be in the books prior to when we see them in bank feed. And then same for a straight up deposit. So looking at match, the match scenario in more detail, here on the kind of upper right portion, we can see the little green rectangle that says one record found, or it may actually find more records, but most common, it'll say one record found. If we dive into that detail, it's going to say, hey, we've got this deposit already in the books for $408. Do you want to match that? So most often we're just clicking on match, and that's a done deal. For some transactions, and particularly if let's say the business owner stops and gets the same coffee order for the office each morning, it ends up being the same amount of, I don't know what a bunch of coffee for an office would cost. Let's say it's $15. So that's a low example. Here in the Bay Area, it'd be closer to $150, but we've got the same amount occurring. If the same amount occurs day after day, then, and that transaction is entered, say, on the mobile device, then it's in the books so that when we see bank feed, it's going to say, hey, we've got multiple transactions within a pretty tight date range that are of the same amount and have the same description. So in that case, you would click on where it says 2 records found, and then you would choose the one that applies to each bank feed item. And a lot of times, if it's really, 5 different transactions that are each $100, and they're all within the week or maybe all on the same day, you can just choose willy-nilly really which one matches to which. It's just about getting the 5 bank feed items matched to the 5 transactions within the books.
Yep.
And then we can also, on the money out side, have common scenarios for matching. So expenses, checks that we're entering, maybe printing within QBO, those are already in the books, so they're going to be a match. And same with bill payments. So we've got money in and money out transactions that apply to the match scenario. So this looks, well, this isn't technically a repeat. We're talking about money out in this case. We also have the ability to find a match if it doesn't come up automatically. And that can happen if the transaction is quite old before, so it was entered in the books, 2 months ago and the check finally cleared. Bank feed doesn't look back that far. So you may have to actually choose to find a match. So that's the match scenario for money in and money out.
Yeah. It's so
other-
handy. And the thing is, when you do see, you have to be really careful, because I have a situation where a client, when QuickBooks says there's one match, it is not always an actual match. So you want to, especially when you're talking about deposits. So the example that I use over and over, because it happens over and over with one client, is they have the deposit hit the bank, and maybe it is an ACH, it's some sort of wire transfer or EFT, direct deposit payment from specifically Bell Tire, I'm just going to say, here in Michigan. And it's paying multiple invoices that are open in QuickBooks Online. And at least, I'd say once a quarter, twice a quarter, no less than once every 3 months, that payment for those multiple invoices happens to be the same exact amount for another single open invoice. And so QuickBooks will say, hey, we found this match. And what has happened is my client has not gone into QuickBooks Online and done the receive payment for each one of those invoices and then made the deposit. So I have to make sure that I pay extra attention to the bank detail that is coming through that. And I really have to make sure that the bank detail, because it is an ACH and it does say Bell Tire directly in there, I want to make sure that that is matching the correct transaction in QuickBooks Online, because it just happened twice. I received the payment. I was like, oh yeah, matches. Great. Good to go. Let's move on. And it turns out it was a completely different customer matching one invoice when it should have been matching 4 or 5 different Bell Tires. And so I undid the match. I went in, and we'll show you how to undo. And I did that. And then it actually matched again to another completely different invoice, and the client was like, it's still not right. And I was, so you want to make sure that you're really kind of paying attention. And also, this is why it's really important, and we talked about that workflow in part 1, where you want to make sure that you're following that workflow where you're entering the invoices, you are receiving the payment, and then you are making the deposit. So that ideally what should have happened is when the bank feed pulled that transaction and that deposit, it should have said, hey, there's 2 transactions this could be matching to. One is a deposit, one is an open invoice. So that's just something to just be aware of. Just because it says it's matching, it doesn't always mean it's matching to the correct transaction. So you want to just kind of click in and just make sure that everything is good.
Yeah, and it's not really funny in real life. I think Stacy and I tend to laugh just because we see this quite often. So it's
Oh,
important.
I'm laughing because it was 100% my mistake, not once but twice. Like, I do this for a living and I teach this to people for a living, and yet I still made the mistake not once but 2 times within like a 3-week period. So that is why I am giggling.
Yeah, well, so that really underscores how important it is to be diligent
Yes.
about bank feed, no matter who is the operator. So the other thing we can do in bank feed is add transactions where we're using bank feed as the data entry input. No transaction exists in the books. We're getting the information from the bank or credit card, and we're adding it into the books. We're assigning a payee, we're assigning a category, and we're choosing to add. So this example is great because it has some things we want to watch out for. So if you see a money in transaction, and I feel that money in transactions are most often a match scenario, not an add scenario.
Well,
Because,
I did too
okay.
until I learned that I still need to be very careful.
Okay.
I would say that is the case if the workflow is being followed.
Yeah.
In my case, the workflow isn't always being followed, because I'm not receiving payments. That's not part of the scope of work. I'm
Right.
relying on the people that work for my client and my client to make sure that by the time those are hitting the bank, that those transactions are already in QuickBooks. And so what happens is it's not, and things get messed up. And I mean, technically, yes, I didn't look at it, but honestly, the workflow was not followed properly, and therefore that's where the train kind of fell off the tracks.
Right. So here we have a deposit, and even if this is a deposit that is outside of the normal business workflow and we just want to categorize it, the category should never be set to uncategorized income, and expenses should never be set to uncategorized expense. The reason is we really want the categories to reflect what they were. Were they office expense? Were they utilities? So that you can look at the P&L and know your profit and loss statement to know what categories you're spending money. To have it all in buckets of uncategorized income and uncategorized expense is not helpful to you as a business owner. So we want to categorize it. And the reason we see uncategorized income and uncategorized expense, by the way, is that's just the default for any transaction in bank feed. So you want to come up with categories, and you really should, you will have a chart of accounts based on your business in QBO. So you want to categorize that to something other than uncategorized. We can also, as an efficiency technique, select multiple transactions and record them as a group. So we can filter what we see within bank feed, and then we can select multiple transactions and record them. This is kind of, I think, less common for business owners, but certainly relevant. If you have many transactions from one vendor, you may want to sort by payee and do them all as one mass recording. So you've got the ability to filter what you see and also to group transactions together as you enter them. So actually, let's go out into QBO here. We've got in this credit card account, we've got many transactions that are the Capital One Cafe. So here, first, we can sort by payee just by clicking on the payee column. And I'll sort in reverse so that, or Starbucks. So, or stamps.com. We've got a lot of stamps.com. So what we can do is select all of the stamps.com transactions, and then we can record them all at once. Now, of course, we would want to change the category here, probably to office supplies or postage, something like that.
I vote for postage.
Postage, okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, we don't have one.
Well, that's a really good opportunity to show how we can create accounts on the fly. I love these situations.
So we're gonna, we just typed in postage, and we're gonna choose add postage. And here we can add a new account all from within bank feed. So we're gonna set this up as an expense account. We're gonna set its detail type as general administrative expenses. We're going to call it postage, and we're going to make postage a sub account of office supplies. So we can see the detail for what we pay in postage, and we can also see that it's part of a larger group of office related stuff. So now we have added that account. Did I misspell expense? Expense. No, that's right. I think it's just underlined because the colon and the P in postage are all without spaces. So here, notice once we do that, it actually applies that. This is this quote unquote smart learning where QBO is adding that new account to all of the transactions that we checked off here for stamps.com. So then we can, now that we've selected all these transactions, it's saying here we can accept all 6 of these transactions in one fell swoop. So we would click then accept, and that's going to record those transactions in the books. I'm not going to do it because it's a demo, but we just wanted you to have a sense that you can record multiple transactions in a batch scenario. You can also sort by column. You can modify what columns you see. Maybe actually that would be helpful to show. So we've got this little, we talk a lot about the gear icon that's here in the upper right. We also have a smaller gear here.
Baby gear.
What's that?
With baby gear.
Baby gear is what we colloquially call it. It is technically called the grid gear. And this gives you a choice about what columns you see and what options you have within BankFeed. So one of the things that Stacy and I both love is copy bank detail to memo.
Mm-hmm.
This means that that text that's coming from the bank is going to end up in the memo line of the transaction. And this is really important if for some strange reason, no payee is assigned to the transaction. It makes me shudder to even say that, but it can happen. If that happens, we can search for transactions by memo. So having that bank detail in the memo and just providing more context about the transaction is important. And then also there is a show bank details option, which I really love. I want to see the actual stuff that's coming from the bank.
Same.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because there is, if we turn off this show bank details, what we see in the description column is a creation of QBO. It's typically abbreviating what we get from the bank detail in some way.
Sort of, but I've been really paying attention to this, and I honestly, I cannot figure out where it's getting, how it's making the description.
Yeah, it is strange. Sometimes it'll be really completely different words, right?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, where did it, what just, what happened?
The initial idea was that if you have, a gas station or, Jamba Juice or something, and then in the bank detail, it'll show the store number or some other extraneous information to record the transaction in QBO anyway. And so it would truncate it, and that makes sense. But yeah, I've seen that too, where description comes up with seemingly mysterious options. So that's why if you say show bank details, you're seeing exactly precisely what's coming from the bank.
Yep.
So the grid gear is a good thing to know about, and then we can sort by any of the columns just by clicking on them. So you can sort date. Yeah, I think that's what we wanted to show, is just that those grid gear options.
Mm-hmm.
So we showed this, how you can select multiple transactions and record them. So those are the options to record things through BankFeed with the add or the match scenario. And for whatever reason, I don't have a a view of the Q&A panel. So I don't
Oh,
know
I
if we
can see
have-
it. There's no questions.
I don't know if we have any questions on,
No,
or if there's
not yet.
anything else you wanted to add, Stacy, about.
No, the only thing I think we're gonna, before we do this, I
Yeah.
want to just talk a little bit. I know, did you mention rules at all?
No.
Okay.
Let's
So
talk rules.
I
I'll be yours,
wanted,
Vanna.
yeah, so I want to just talk a little bit about what we saw here. So we can see there is a rule set up for liquid space. And this is another way that you can really take advantage of the automation. When you go into your bank feeds or your transactions, and then you go into the rules tab, you can see we have some rules set up. And we have one for liquid space, as you can see that it is, so when and this is what the bank text versus the description comes in. QuickBooks will suggest to you, if you have situations, they'll say, hey, do you want to create a rule? If you take, a bunch of transactions that are all very similar, like maybe Starbucks, and you say, this is all meals. It'll say, hey, it'll suggest a rule. And what the rule is doing is it's going to say the description if the description equals this. And I always, if I decide to accept that suggested rule, I'm always going to say edit, because when you are creating rules, I think it is very important. You're going to give your rule a name, which we've named liquid space. We want to set this for money out, and it doesn't matter for which account we're going to use it. We want it for all of them. What we want to do when we're setting the criteria is, if you drop that down where it says bank text, it's going to by default want to do that description. And I would say, as it's a joke that Bryce and I have, almost always. But really, always make your rules have choose the bank text, and then you can simply copy and paste directly from the bank text into where it says the next box that you can fill in is the liquid space. So if the bank text contains liquid space, and this is just a copy paste directly into that, we want to create an expense transaction. We want to assign the expense account or category of rent, and then we want to choose a payee called liquid space. And this way, every time the bank feed sees a transaction that comes in that has the word liquid space anywhere in the bank detail, because remember, the description is just something that QBO has arbitrarily made up, but we always want to use the bank text. I picked up an account from a previous bookkeeper, and what I found was that a lot of the rules were set up using description, and I couldn't figure out why none of the rules that were set up were being applied. And once I started digging into them, it was because the description was one thing one time, and then the next time the description was changed to something else. So this is where I think that bank text versus description is really important to think about in setting up those rules. Anything else about, and the other thing about rules that we can talk about is there's another rule. There's two of them actually, and you can see one of them is called Amazon over $50, and the other one is called Amazon Office. So we can set up priorities with rules, with bank rules, and say, I want you to apply this one first before another one, and you can drag and drop them in the list. So this one you can see, this is just an example. I don't want you to think that you should ever do Amazon transactions just like this. The reason that I picked this was simply because I knew there was going to be there were a lot of Amazon transactions in the bank feed for this demo account. So what we've set up is we've said, okay, so for any transaction, over $50, and the bank text contains Amazon, so we can set up multiple criteria here. So the criteria that we're looking for is it has to have all of the criteria, not just one of these two things. So if the bank text contains Amazon, and the amount is greater than $49.99, so anything $50 or over, we want to create an expense. We want to post it to a tools expense account, and we want the payee to be Amazon. So why would we do this? Well, I have clients who they have capital expenditure limits that are internal, and they may want that to post to an asset account versus expensing it out. You can see we have another Amazon rule called Amazon Office. And so this one is saying for any money out, it's very similar. And so this is saying for any bank account, if the bank text contains Amazon, we want you to post this to, we want 50% to be office supplies. We want 50% to be tools. Now, this is a completely made up. That's what the whole point of these two examples are to show that we can use multiple criteria in a bank rule. We can also set priority. So in this rule, we're not giving it a dollar amount. We're saying for anything Amazon, 50% goes to expense, 50% goes to tool, and then you're going to save this, right? Now, when we get back, if you want to close this out, when we get back to our rules list, you can see, wait, go back. Yeah, you can see that the Amazon over 50 is set to number 1 priority. So that rule is going to be applied before the other one. So if it were below that, QuickBooks would automatically just do that 50-50. But because we've said, wait, if the dollar amount is over $49.99, we want you to take the whole transaction and post it to tools. So if we go back to our bank feed list, and you can sort this by category or match, you might have to flip around between some of the, instead of like date or description. I think if you go to, there we go. So you can see this rule, these rules are in action. These transactions here that say split, this is the 50-50 split. These are all under 40. These are all $49.99 or below. And the ones that are above 50 are the tools expense. So the rules and the prioritization are working perfectly. So this is where you can really see the power of the bank feeds and the rules. And again, you don't want to do this with your Amazon transactions. You want to actually code them to what they are.
So if you set up a rule and the rule does not appear to be working as you originally envisioned, then you want to look at the setup of the rule and the priority of the rule to see if one of those two is the culprit. We know from having worked with bank rules so much that if there's an issue with bank rule, you set something up and it's not working out, it's you, not QBO.
Exactly.
And we say that with all the love, peace, and harmony available.
I
just
have
to
set up
make
rules
clear.
that have not worked, and I have said to Bryce, it's not working, and he said, no, it's working. You just didn't do it correctly.
So that's the mechanics of bank feed setup, how you can record through an ad, how you can match to help reconcile, and how you can set up rules to make it more efficient. So now we're going to switch gears to identify the chart of accounts, which is something that's really familiar to accounting professionals and can be confusing to business owners. So the chart of accounts is our list of accounts of various types, and essentially every transaction within QBO is going to be assigned to one of these chart of accounts. So it's a core element of any accounting system. So we can look at the chart of accounts by going to accounting on the left navigation and then into chart of accounts. It's one place that we can go to look at a bank register, a credit card register. We can get a report on um, income or expense account details. So it may not be someplace you go repeatedly as a business owner, but it's important to know that it's showing what your liquid assets are, what your long-term assets are, and it has the categorization for income and expense. So you may want to go in and modify even the spelling of an account name, and you can do that from this chart of accounts list. So we've got different account types. There are 5 main account types, and then there are some subtypes, so to speak. So, and the chart of accounts, when we look at it, is listed with what you own first, then what you owe, and then your income and expense categories, and then finally the equity, what's left over after earnings. So when you set up a new account, you're going to need to assign it an account type. Most often, when you're creating an account, you're going to be creating a new expense account, maybe a new income account, and it might be related to setting up products and services, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So on when we look at the very top of our chart of accounts, those are the accounts that show up at the top of the balance sheet. So we're going to see a direct relationship between our chart of accounts list and what shows up on a balance sheet, where we're showing the amount, the balance of that account as of the date that the balance sheet was generated. So we can see here, there are a lot of arrows. I think the idea here is just to show that you're going to, every account that you see in the chart of accounts, you're going to see on the balance sheet to the extent it has a balance at the date that you run the balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Lower on the balance sheet, we're going to see the liabilities and equity section. And this is the same thing where you go lower on the chart of accounts, you're going to see these categories. And they are also shown in priority of liquidity. So we're going to see our most liquid, our most current, meaning due soon liabilities, accounts payable. We've got things due generally within 30 days. Credit cards are a separate category, but also within, on average, 45 days. And then we've got other current liabilities, which means they're due within a year. And then there are long-term liabilities that go over multiple years, like an SBA loan. So
Exactly.
our profit and
Good
loss is
example.
What's that?
Good example with the SBA.
Oh, thank you.
Hmm?
Topical.
Yes.
So we also have our profit and loss accounts, our income and expense accounts, and then we also have other income and other expense. Same thing, you're running a profit and loss that's going to show all of the applicable income and expense accounts, whether those are from transactions directly coded or categorized to an income or expense account, or whether it's done through a product or service. And we're going to talk about that setup. So we have a special category called cost of goods sold, COGS. And in a service business, this would just be cost of sales, even though it's called cost of goods sold on the report. We actually have the option to change that title for a service business. The distinction between a cost of sales or cost of goods sold and a regular expense account is the cost of goods sold account is directly related to the service provided or the goods that are sold. So as revenue goes up, cost of sales or cost of goods sold will also go up.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case with a regular expense account. If you're paying $5,000 in rent every month for commercial space, it doesn't matter if you double or triple your sales, that expense account is still going to remain the same.
Yeah. You never want to sign a lease agreement that is based on percentage of revenue.
Yeah, that's
just a business
that's
best
true.
practice there.
That was a good one. So, expense accounts are also known as overhead, things that do not relate directly to dollar volume of revenue. So, to add a new account, we actually already showed this when we were in BankFeed because we can do it right from within BankFeed. You can also go to the chart of accounts and then in the upper right, click that green action button of new, assign an account type, assign a detail type, and the detail type is just to help you with some of the common options. And then you can, when you choose the detail type, it's going to put a name automatically in the name field, but you can change that to whatever you want. And then you can make it a sub account. If you have multiple, you have health insurance, you have liability insurance, those can be sub accounts of a general category that's just insurance, so that you can see overall a collapsed profit and loss statement and just look at the highlights. And you can also know the detail of the sub accounts. So next we're going to talk about products and services. And this is, it gets a little bit dynamic. So products and services, very simply, is what we're selling to our customer. It may also be what we're purchasing from a vendor. But let's just focus on the money inside. Products and services are what we have appear on a sales receipt or an invoice form. And then in the behind the scenes, as you're setting up a product or service, you're assigning what category gets hit when that product or service is used. So you may think of, if you ring up a sale on a sales receipt, you may code that sale to, as I don't know, sales of water fountains. That may be the category of income, water fountain sales. But water fountain sales apply to the water fountain itself, the service and maintenance of water fountains. There may be multiple products and services that are involved that end up in that category. So we set up we set up multiple products and or services related to water fountains, and those are all going to group on the profit and loss statement into that one category. The benefit of using products and services, in addition to it making it easy for the customer to understand what was purchased, is that you have another dimension on which to report. You can look at profitability or sales volume by product or service, not just by category on a profit and loss statement. So to set up a product or service, we're going to go, there are multiple ways to get to products and services. I think of one of the most common ways is to go here into the sales area and then go to products and services. So here in this list, maybe we'll just create a new service here. We're in one of our sample companies called Churros and Burros, and we're going to create, let's say, a new service. And if we're doing churros and burros, let's say this is going to be burro cleaning. It's a service we sell. Here we are assigning, that category is an optional field, as is class. But here in the income account is where we're going to set something that helps us on when we look at our profit and loss overall. So here we're going to put this in the Burroughs revenue sales income account. And I don't know how much somebody would charge for burro cleaning. Let's say it's $300. It involves the full undercarriage cleaning and everything. So
And like a burro farrier, so we can get the hooves.
So here we're going to say the customer will see burro cleaning complete with undercarriage. That's what the customer is going to see. And then, as we mentioned earlier, you can also set up a service to be used on money out transactions. So if you're buying something from a vendor and then turning around and selling it to your customer, you might want to use that same product on both the purchase and the sale. But let's just focus on sale for now. So we've created this item, borough cleaning. It's going to go to our borough's revenue account, but then we can, so separate from looking at our profit and loss where we can see all of the revenue related to boroughs, we can also look at a sales by product or service where we're going to be able to see all the sales of borough cleaning. We can also see the quantity of times that we've done borough cleaning to see whether that's a successful product or service. And then separately, we can assign, if we have sales tax involved, we can assign whether that is a taxable product. So now that we've set up our product and service, we're ready to create transactions that are going to code to the appropriate category and give us information about product and service profitability. So we talked previously about cash versus accrual.
Yes.
So this is just a refresher you can review. We go to look at the results of operations. We go to the report center. On the left navigation, we're choosing reports, and we can choose from any of the reports that are available, or we can actually type in the name of the report that we want. And we can set reports as favorites. So if we're out here in QBO, we go to reports. Maybe the accounts receivable aging summary is not one of our favorite reports. We can just uncheck that star. And maybe what is really valuable to us is a sales by product or service summary. So we can make, well, there's no information on that report, but if there is a report that we like, we can just click on the favorites, and that's going to put it up here in the top. Or not. Why is that not showing up? Oh, there, that showed up. What am I, my business snapshot? Oh, there it is. I must not have clicked it or clicked it twice. So we can search for a report, or we can just run a report off of the list. So the basic two reports that we're going to be that you're going to be interested in are the most common report that you're really interested in is the profit and loss, because that's going to show you what you've earned and what you've spent. Separately, we can look at I wish we had a better example, but we're not going to be able to see. If we say sales by product or service summary, maybe I'll just set it to all and see if we have any data in there. Oh, perfect. So here, because we've set up products and services, when we run a sales by product or service summary, we can see how many we've sold, the total dollar volume, and even the percentage of sales. So that's pretty valuable. We can see from this report that we should really focus on selling more churros, since we've sold almost 80,000 of them, and it generates half of our total revenue. So that's pretty valuable.
We've sold a lot of churros.
Yeah, churros are amazing. It's no surprise that we've sold that many.
Yeah,
churros.
and that's why I like those reports, because if you have clients who are selling different types of service, I have a client who does a lot of business coaching. He also has a big community with different, they're kind of like mastermind groups. He calls them roundtable groups for, they're for business owners, but also for accounting professionals. And what he's finally able to do, because we've set these all up as different items to be used, different service items to be used on sales receipts and invoices, is he is finally able to see what is the most profitable, because he has hosts who maybe are helping him, that are moderating these roundtables. He's doing the coaching. He's able to see whether or not certain roundtables are profitable, whether they are productive, which ones are more popular, and that's really allowing him to sort of cull the herd and see, what do I need to keep all 10 of these different groups, or can I maybe get rid of 2 that really aren't well attended, or they're really not that profitable. So I am a big fan of using these item reports in QuickBooks to be able to make decisions about where your business is going.
And then if you don't see a report within the list, then it may be because, well, I mean, as a business owner, you're going to be able to see everything, but it may be related to a user permissions, or it may be that the feature just doesn't exist in the given edition of QBO. For example, if you have QBO Essentials, then there's no inventory in QBO Essentials. So any report related to inventory simply won't exist. So it's not like every report is in every edition. So accounts receivable is a common report to run where you're looking at customer balances that are aging. So we can see here we need to follow up with the Red Rock Diner because they're getting beyond 2 months of not having been paid. Flipping to money out, here we can see we're staying current on paying our vendors. No one's beyond the 30-day period. So those aging reports are valuable to keep track of money in and money out in terms of cash flow. And then running a profit and loss is really most common for a business owner. Running a balance sheet can be valuable just to see overall balances due to vendors, total money coming in from customers, but some of that can be confusing, and it can also need to be reconciled. You may need to work with an accounting professional to get the balance sheet ironed out before it's accurate. So our final frontier here is boosting your efficiency within QBO. And I think probably the easiest way is for us to do it in product to show how these tools work. So the first thing, as Stacy mentioned in our previous session, one thing, if somebody is familiar with QuickBooks Desktop and they first move into QBO, they may look at QBO and think, well, here, I mean, there's one tab. What if I want to have a profit and loss report up, and I also want to be creating new transactions? It appears that this is singular, that we can just see within one tab. But the reality is you can have as many windows open as you like within your company, simultaneous. So let's say that we do have a profit and loss report up. We've got the sales by product service. We have that up, and we want to enter transactions at the same time. We're here in Google Chrome, so we can right click on the tab and choose duplicate. Initially, this second tab is going to be that same report because we chose duplicate, but we can go back to the dashboard. These are independent tabs. On our original window, nothing happens to that. That still has our report on it, and the second window has our dashboard. So we can enter a new transaction, whatever we want to do here in the second tab. And we can just keep doing this. If you wanted to have, maybe you want to have, I'm trying to think of another thing that we would have up. You might be reconciling, or
So I almost always most of the time, I would say, so here's when I'm doing bank recs or bank feeds, I will have the bank feed open in one screen. I will have the vendor window, the vendor list, open in another. So if QuickBooks doesn't recognize it, I can do a quick search for the vendor and see where it was posted previously. And then I will also have the search, the advanced search, and all of which I have in a folder in my bookmark bar for easy access. So I can just pop open a new tab and hit my bookmarks bar and go to those pages.
Oh, great example. And
Mhm. I mean, that is daily. I have bank feeds open, vendor list, search every single day.
Wow.
Mhm.
And since these are tabs, we can actually pull them off to go to a second monitor.
And that's exactly what I do. I have that search tab open and the vendor tab in my other monitor, so I can just go back and forth.
And then one trick that I know Stacy loves is, let's say, Stacy, I want the expenses center up on a tab. How can I get very quickly the expenses center up on a new tab?
I mean, you can just drag and drop it. It's really
You
handy.
mean I can just grab expenses, drag it up here, and it'll create a new tab? Oh
Yeah,
my God.
and what's really cool is even from here, I think you can take the vendor tab here and drag it from this window to a new
Right,
tab.
you are.
Yeah. It's pretty handy. The other thing is, like, what if you find that you're doing the same things over and over again in QuickBooks Online, you can use the bookmark bar. So you can click your bookmarks here and you can say, hey, these are the things that I have open all of the time. And you can just right click anywhere on your bookmark bar and create a folder and say, hey, I want to create add folder, and you can call this QBO. And then you can click the bookmark in the URL,
Let me.
and rather than bookmarks bar, yep, you're just going to choose the folder, click done, and now so now you can, if all you have to do is pop open a new tab, you don't even have to drag and drop or do anything like that. You can just open the new tab and go where you need to. I use the bookmarks every day, every single day, all day long. I mean, that's not, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I am not. I literally, in actuality,
Yeah.
as we like to joke around, but right now, because I was working before we started doing this webinar, and I'm going to continue working when we're done, I have bank feeds. I have the bank feed window open for a client. I have the vendor window open for a client, and I have the search bar open every day.
Yes, as do I. Also live with the bookmarks. And the bookmarks can even be specific to a transaction. So not that you would put that in a folder necessarily, but if you're asking one of your, so if somebody's working in your books and you are looking at a transaction and you have a question about it, you can actually just copy that transaction. Find one.
Yeah. The
Each
other thing,
transaction has its own unique URL.
URL. Yeah, and what's cool about this is one of the things that I was doing right before we started doing this webinar is a client had some intercompany transfers, like an expense was accidentally paid out of the wrong account, and so then there was a deposit to offset that account. And so what I was able to do is have a tab open with the expense and a tab open with the deposit, copy the URL from the deposit, put it in the memo of the expense, copy the URL for the expense, put it in the memo of the deposit. So everybody looking at those transactions knows that they offset each other and that they're related.
Right. Super. So here we've got this transaction. We can copy that link. And then for anyone who's logged in to the QBO company, they can just follow that link directly to the transaction. So the other thing about QBO is that sometimes, rarely, but sometimes it's important to clear the cache and cookies if you get unexpected results within QBO.
And I have a trick for this after you get done. I
Okay.
have a little trick about this.
Well, I'm okay, but so with cache and cookies, you can click on the three dots in the upper right, and then within more tools, there's clear browsing data, and then here you can choose the period over which and how much you're clearing. and then you can clear that. And then, so if a report isn't coming up right, I mean, I can't even really think of an example anymore about this commonly.
Oh, I've had to do it a few times in the last couple
Oh, okay.
weeks. And so
Okay.
this is why I have a trick. So the problem is if you are logging into your bank and you're using, if you have a Chrome user or you're using your browser to log into a bank account or whatever, it's not going to remember you the next time. So you may not want to clear out all of the cache and the cookies. You may want to just clear the history for that website. And so one of the ways that you can do this, Bryce, if you want to
Yeah.
just go to QBO, there you go, and hit your F12 button.
Okay.
And so once you have this panel up, you're going to go over to the little refresh button and you're going to right click on that.
Okay.
And you're going to do empty cache and hard reset. So what this is doing is this is just emptying the cache for just the QBO.Intuit, just this website, and it's not going to blow out all of the history and the cookies and the cache for all of the other accounts, so that when you go to them, it doesn't remember and it says, hey, we don't recognize this device. It's just clearing the stuff out for QBO.
That
Would y'all do that again?
yeah.
Yeah, I missed something.
So we're first we're here in QBO and we're doing F12.
And this works for any website. So you're going to go to the website that you want to refresh. You don't even have to be logged in. Usually what I do is I will log out and just go to the login page, but it doesn't matter. So you're going to hit F12. And once you have this panel with all the code on the left open, you're going to go over to the refresh button next to the URL. And you're going to right click on that and you're going to choose the last option, which is empty cache and hard reload or hard reset. And all it's doing is emptying the cache for just that site. So this is why I go to QBO.Intuit. I will log out and just go to QBO.Intuit.com and do this. But this works for any website.
So in that way, you don't have to worry about having to log in to all of your familiar sites within the browser again.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. As a workaround to that, for simpler minds like mine, an alternative is to use the Chrome users concept. And I think
Or
actually,
you can just, or the other thing is you can just use, when you log into QBO, you can use incognito every time. I know a lot of people who use incognito.
oh, okay, right. Whoops, let me get to the right screen here.
But you can use different Chrome users. I mean, you can have a user that is very specific to just having a QBO user.
Right. So this is the way that I manage QBO. I have one Chrome user for email, calendar, all of that kind of stuff, really everything. And then I have a separate Chrome user for QBO. And the benefit of that is that, well, frankly, because I didn't know about this astonishing trick that Stacy just mentioned.
I can't believe I keep forgetting to tell you about this. I mean, we
Well,
talk a lot, and I have been meaning to tell you about this for weeks. It's magic. It's a magic trick.
So with a separate Chrome user, in that way, I have a user just for QBO. And the benefit of that is that I can do clear cache and cookies just like the whole thing, not the F12 trick. I can just do it for the whole instance of the browser. And in that way, I don't have to worry about it messing with the logins that I have saved for my regular Chrome user. So you can have a separate Chrome user for QBO or really any site. And then yet another option is to use an incognito window, which we can just go to the three dots in the upper right and choose new incognito window, which can be used for different things. It's great for QBO because each time you come in, it's not going to have the history essentially. So those are some tips. Oh, and then finally, there are keyboard shortcuts within QBO. What? Did he just say that? Yes, there are actually keyboard shortcuts you can use with QBO to maximize your efficiency and to remember what the keyboard shortcuts are can be kind of tricky. So what you can do is hold down Control Alt and question mark. And the way I remember the Control Alt question mark is I live in California, and the abbreviation for California is CA. So that's how I remember, like, California question mark. And we're a questionable state, so you can just think California questionable, CA question mark. So that'll bring up your company ID and will list the keyboard shortcuts here. So you're doing Control Alt. That's essentially the default for any of these keyboard commands is you're doing Control Alt, and then if you do Control Alt I, that's going to bring up an invoice. Pretty neat, right?
Yeah.
So you can get to all of these transactions and even searching. There's really a lot of items here in the list that you can use for shortcuts.
Yeah, I love the shortcuts. I just want to say I use those a lot. Just a little update on the storm.
Oh, great. Yes.
Yeah, I just, my sister just sent me a text message that said, with an update that says travel could be difficult, very difficult to impossible, which I think is a little dramatic, weather.gov. I'm just gonna say, like, that's a little dramatic. Anyway.
We were talking about weather really before we started.
Yeah,
And how
we
different
were.
the weather is. I'm in Northern California, which can be quite cool. We've got a high of 61 today. So it's
Yeah, I
not
mean,
the
that's,
SoCal
you better
situation.
bundle up for that.
That's right.
So we're finished a little bit early. Do you guys have any, and does anybody have any questions, that they might have, about what we talked about today?
I have a few.
Okay.
Well, one comment, I can tell, here, let me put my picture on.
Yep.
I can tell that I have not ever used QBO for all it's worth. I am amazed at some of the stuff that you can do on there.
So I will say that unless you're living, breathing, and like Bryce and I are all day long, every day, and you have just so many different situations that we run into dealing with clients, I would say that is the rule and not the exception.
Mhm.
Most people, when we sit down with them and start doing these sort of trainings, they're like, "What? Wait, what?" Like, you know, they're just, yeah, just completely surprised at just a lot of the stuff that can be done. So that is absolutely, I'm very excited to get that reaction, because it is my favorite reaction.
It is a powerful tool. I was not aware just how powerful. Okay, in a situation, I think Stacy, you brought this up, in a situation where maybe you're taking over for one or two people that have had their hands in it over the past 5, 10 years, whatever. And you look at the chart of accounts and you see duplication. How do you fix that? How do you clean that up? That drives me crazy.
So what we usually, I'm just doing this for a client right now. He thought the grass was greener on the other side, and he came back a few months later. And he went from 50 accounts to over 300 with whomever was doing. And some of them are the most ridiculous accounts, and many of them are very duplicated. And so I'm in the process of like slowly cleaning that up. And so what I usually do is when I find an account that is like that, I just did one that was like job supplies, job materials, cost of goods sold materials. What I do is I make sure, first of all, that each account is the same type. as well as detail type. So you have to go in and look at each one of the accounts that you're dealing with the duplicates. So say job supplies and job materials, make sure that they're both, you know, cost of goods sold or, you know, expense or whatever. And then I will go and merge them. So if I want them to be job materials, I'm going to copy job materials, then go edit the job supplies and change the name to job materials. And then when I go to save it, QuickBooks Online is going to say, you already have an account. Do you want to merge them? And I will say yes. So you can merge those accounts. You can also do that with items. You can merge customers and vendors. Anytime you have a duplicate like that, you can definitely merge them and clean that up. The thing about merging them though, is that old account, that job supplies, is not actually going to be disappeared. It's not going to be deleted. What happens in QuickBooks with customers and vendors and anything that is in a list is when you delete it or you merge it with another one, it isn't really deleted, it's just made inactive. So it's still there, but if you have but when somebody wants to create a transaction, they're unable to choose that from the list because it just doesn't show up. But you can go to the chart of accounts or the customer list and say show inactive, and it will show all of those transactions that have been made inactive or merged or deleted, because that's the other thing is that QuickBooks Online says deleted, but it's not really deleted. It is just simply made inactive.
So can you go back and reactivate it?
You can. You can, if you're in your chart of accounts, you can go to that baby gear, that grid gear, and you can click on that and you can, oops.
There's a cat.
Sorry, that is Frankie. He's my troublemaker. He is one of my agents of chaos. You can click that baby gear or that grid gear icon and you can say show inactive, and then you can go to that inactive account. You can edit it. You can, over in the action column, you can say make active again. So you can make them active again.
Just in case.
Just in case.
But the other thing to keep in mind is when you do the merge, it's going to move all those transactions from kind of the bad account to the new account. That is not a reversible decision.
Right.
Yeah.
But the account name, you can certainly reactivate.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. So if you wanted to start brand new using that account for whatever reason.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could even rename it. Like you can make it active again and name it something completely different and use it for something totally different. And I have done that so that people will not activate stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I can see where that would really be beneficial. So if you have like two screens up, like you've got your P&L up, and then you're doing some sort of work, you're entering transactions or something like that, does that automatically change the P&L? Like, can you watch it?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually.
You can watch it happen in real time.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
cool.
basically magic. I mean, sometimes you have to refresh.
Magic.
You used to have to refresh each time you did it on two different transactions. Like if you're in a reconciliation, then you will need to do a refresh of the reconcile screen. But with reports, they are automatically going to update when you enter transactions.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Can you demonstrate how to create a custom report?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. Will you?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Questions, and anyway, I know better than that.
Bye. No, just kidding.
That was good.
Sure
yes, I can.
See ya.
Question answered. So here in our report center, we're going to start with the profit and loss report, and we're going to set it for all dates. And let's say,
can I pick a different one? A different customization?
Yep.
One that I use for my business all the time. I will do a P&L, a year-to-date P&L. So I'll do this year to date. And then I will do a comparative. Yep, I will say I want to compare it to previous year, and then I will save this customization. And I use this, just looked at it this morning for my own business. And then you can click that green action button that says Save Customization. Oh yeah, you changed the title. Yep. Good thinking. I always forget to do that part. And then you can choose to share that customization. You can say, I want to share it with just, like this says with the firm because we're logged in as accountant users. But I think when you share it as a user, you can choose to share it with other users or not. And you can just keep it for yourself.
So once we say save, now when we go into the reports center, it's available in the custom reports list.
Okay.
And this is that report. So now when we run this report, immediately it already has all the filters, it has the title change, and we can even, you know, filter by customer, by account, at any level of customization. And then you can just very quickly bring that up. And you can even set it to automatically email out on a scheduled basis if you want, you know.
Yep.
Pretty phenomenal, huh?
I'm
You're
amazed.
speechless.
I have no words. Really, which is odd. That never happens. But wow. Okay. Are there any other questions? And just unmute yourself and ask.
Stunned silence.
Everybody's amazed and shocked. So
Stunned silence.
it definitely is that. Okay. Well, I don't know what else to say other than I am so impressed. This has been such a great presentation last week and this week. I had no idea that QBO was so powerful.
Thank you.
I used to be able to get through desktop with no problem. I could run reports and all sorts of stuff. And then when we switched to QBO, I went, whoa, this doesn't look the same
Yeah.
at all.
It can be an adjustment because it's very it is very different for sure.
It certainly is. Certainly is that. It looks, I think the shocking part is how different it looks right away from the desktop. But
once you get used to that, it's very, I mean, like we talked about last week, a check is a check. The functionality is still very, very similar.
Okay, thank you both. I've thoroughly enjoyed these two presentations. I'm just blown away. Just want to remind everyone that you'll be receiving a survey. And if you would please give us an idea of how we're doing, give us some ideas of what you would like to see in the future. Also, you can include your email and then we will be happy to send resources to you as well as our YouTube channel so that you can go back and look at not only these QBO webinars, but all of the ones that we've done over the past year and a half. It's just phenomenal. I do want to share with you that we have more upcoming webinars. We have one this afternoon with Rebecca Schultz, one of our favorites, using government debt strategically, talk about timely with all of the COVID relief funding that's been going on. And then Thursday, sliding in on the ice and snow here, we will have marketing your business from the driver's seat with Melissa Forziat. She's always fun. And team decisions, how to get them right with Lorna Kibbe. She's always full of information. And then we have more income tax next week, tax filing for small businesses, business owner tax responsibilities, and then somebody to help us have a great day.
Oh, and we also have coming up, I'm not sure, without looking at my calendar, we also have Intro to Payroll coming up, Introduction to
Yeah.
QuickBooks Online Payroll. I believe we're doing that on the 8th as well.
Double header.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will have it on this afternoon's slide. I didn't have any room there.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to call it out. It's
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
And
Another.
I just want to say that is a very fast pace. If anybody's here that's going to be attending that one, that is a very fast pace. That is going to be a fire hose of information, both of those webinars. Just FYI.
Oh, yay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to take it all in, and now we get more. Yay. But that'll be a great presentation. I know a lot of people that'll be interested in seeing that.
We can't wait.
Also, you can access our website using that QR code where you can actually register for these webinars, and you can get contact information. You can schedule an appointment with an advisor. And also you can take a look at all of the resources we already have on our website for small businesses. As I said earlier, we are grant funded, and because of that, I definitely want to give a shout out to our benefactors, the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office in Dallas, and our host college, North Central Texas College. Thank you all for joining us today. Join us this afternoon, and for next February 8th, next week, we will have Introduction to Payroll, QBO Payroll, more good stuff. Thank you all for joining us, and this will end the webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.